she was 20, untouched, and sold in daylight to a man no one dared defy. They say when the law left Cinderbrush, God wasn't far behind. The sky got meaner, the folks quieter, even the dust quit trying to settle. I was born with nothing, and somehow still ended up owing. Uncle Hoyt called it a debt of blood. My mother died birthing me. My father got gutted in a card game 3 winters after. Hoyt took me in, raised me on stew scraps and stories, told me I should be grateful, told me I was lucky. Lucky girls don't get traded like cattle. It happened plain as Sunday, outside the saloon, no more hush than a weather forecast. I just turned 20, wore my mama's old shawl to mark the day. It still smelled of cedar and heat. Hoyt staggered out, boots dragging like chains, drunk off credit he didn't own. A crowd had gathered, drawn by his hollering, and there he was, spilling whiskey on his shirt front and pointing at me like I was a sack of beans. "She's strong," he slurred. "Good teeth. Womb like her mother's, I reckon." I didn't cry, didn't move, because I knew who stood across from him. Silas Vane, the Baron of Black Ridge. Tall, pale, silent. No one knew if he could speak, and no one dared ask. His wealth could turn a town's future. His silence could freeze it. He didn't even glance at me, just held out a hand. Hoyt dropped a coin purse in it, or maybe it was the other way around. Memory's a blurry traitor. And just like that, I was property. The crowd didn't flinch. Mrs. Hobb from the bakery looked away. Sheriff Wills took a long sip from his flask. Someone laughed, soft, awkward. I tried to speak, but my voice, like my choice, was gone. Silas turned without a word, and his man, the steward they called him, motioned me forward. I followed, not because I wanted to, because there was no place left to stay. The wagon was plain but clean. I sat on a crate, knees clutched. No one spoke. No one stopped us. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Cinderbrush didn't wave goodbye. We rode for hours, maybe days, I couldn't tell. The steward fed me twice, bread, broth, no eye contact. I asked where we were going. He nodded forward. Eventually, the road changed. Stone overtook dust. Trees thickened. Cold bit harder. And then it rose. Black Ridge Manor. Gray as grief, tall as judgment. It sat like a scar in the mountain. The gates opened with a groan that felt final. As we entered, the steward finally spoke. One word, voice dry as ash. Inside. The door closed behind me. There were no chains, no orders, just a long, quiet hallway, and a room with my name on the door, or at least a name. M. Vane. I stepped inside. No candles, just dusk leaking through cracked curtains. A single bed, a small desk, a pitcher of water, and a silver comb. Still warm.
No locks, no threats, just a tray of broth and a door left ajar. I thought there'd be bolts, shackles, some backhanded ceremony of ownership. Instead, I woke to quiet. The window showed dawn, crawling in like a thief, gray and patient. On the floor, just inside the door, was a wooden tray, warm broth, hard bread, and a folded note that wasn't a note at all, just my name, scrawled in clean block letters. Eleanor. not Mara. No signature, no sound in the hallway. I didn't touch the food, not at first. Instead, I explored. The room was tidy, like someone still grieved inside it. Everything had that feeling of once belonged to. The desk drawer held a dried rose. The wardrobe had only my clothes, stitched new but modest. No mirror, just the silence pressing in, thick as wool. By afternoon, I'd found the limits. The hall stretched long and hollow, lined with shut doors. Dust muted my steps. The steward appeared once to bring more food. Same look, same nod. I tried to speak, but he only raised a brow like I'd broken some rule of volume. The tray came twice a day after that, always warm, always untouched by a hand I could name. And the door, always left open. No threats, no commands, just quiet. It messed with your head. Day 3, I found a parlor with a piano. Sheet music left mid-turn. I didn't play, just stared at the keys, wondering whose fingers had last touched them. Day 5, I screamed into the empty hall. No one came. The 7th night, I tried the outer doors. They weren't locked. I saddled a horse from the stable by memory. Pa taught me that much before dying with a king-high hand. I made it as far as the tree line before I heard it. A slow, steady click. Turned and saw him, Silas Vane, framed in the barn door, rifle across his back, coat ghosting in the wind. He didn't speak, didn't come closer, just stood, watching. I could have run, I should have. Instead, I froze. I didn't know if I feared him or what waited past the trees more. After a long minute, I dismounted and led the horse back. He held the gate open for me. Not a word passed between us. That night, I found the first whisper. A loose stone behind the wardrobe. I tugged it free. Behind it, a ribbon, pale blue, frayed at one end, and a single carved word scratched into the stone. Mara. That name again. Vane. I returned the stone, left the ribbon in the drawer. Then I lay in bed, awake as the manor creaked like old bones. If this is a prison, I thought, then kindness is the warden, and that's worse than bars.
He promised to protect me. I died waiting. Routine is a liar. It tells you you're safe just because the hours stop surprising you. I woke, ate, walked, slept, repeat. And in the cracks between, Black Ridge began to murmur. Not with voices, but with shape. The way a hallway curved like a spine. The way certain stairs creaked, others did not. The coldness of a doorknob untouched for years. The smell of apples somewhere beneath stone. Silas never spoke, but I began to feel him. Not hovering, not lurking. Present, like air. On the 11th day, the steward left a book on my tray. Wuthering Heights, of all things. Its cover was cracked leather, corners softened by time. A note fluttered from inside. Page 134. That's all it said. There, scrawled in the margin beside a torn paragraph,
was one sentence. Some men speak with silence louder than thunder. No signature, just that. I didn't know if it was from Mara or from him. Didn't matter, because that's the day I began to look at him differently. He came in the evenings now, not inside the room, but near it. Once, I opened my door to find him in the hallway, back turned, reading, or pretending to. I spoke once. Why me? He didn't flinch, didn't answer. But the next day, the tray had honey with the bread. That was when I found the room. Behind the parlor shelf, a hollow space, hidden but not locked. Inside, dust, stillness, and a journal, bound in brown leather, the kind that cracks when the air shifts. Its first page, Mara Vane, July 1871. Her handwriting was tight, fierce. She wrote like she was pressing each word into memory by force. It wasn't a diary. It was a record of waiting. Page after page of small acts. A loaf left on the steps, a coat sewn, a song hummed into an empty room. She wrote of Silas like one might write about a storm, admiration edged with fear. She called him loyal, wounded, proud. But on the last page, only one sentence was written. He promised to protect me. I died waiting. I held that book to my chest and let the tears come. Because Mara sounded like me. Because I wasn't ready to become her. But I didn't run again. Instead, I began to watch Silas. Not for menace, for cracks. He walked with a limp I hadn't noticed before. Always touched the same banister post in passing. Smelled faintly of smoke and saddle oil. He lingered near the west windows where the view was widest. And sometimes I swear he looked afraid. Of what, I didn't know. One night, I found him sitting on the cold floor outside my room. Not guarding, just there. I didn't ask why, but I sat beside him, in silence. Because maybe the quiet wasn't a cage. Maybe it was how broken things learn to breathe.
He held her hand through fever, even as she thrashed against ghosts. The day I fell, it was raining hard enough to wash sins off bone. I'd gone to the south garden, where weeds had strangled the soil into silence. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof that something else had once grown here. Maybe I was looking for her. The edge of the stone path had slicked with moss. My foot slid, and I went down hard. Hip, shoulder, temple. I remember the crack. I remember my teeth biting into the inside of my cheek. Then, dark. I came to in my bed. My dress was gone, replaced with a long cotton shift. My skin was burning, soaked through with sweat. The walls swam. He was there. Silas. Sitting in the chair by the bed, head bowed, hand wrapped around mine. I tried to speak. What came out was a moan, like a kicked animal. He didn't leave. The fever came in waves. Sometimes I dreamed I was buried alive, clawing at earth. Other times, I heard Mara's voice whispering in my ear. He won't let you die. That's the cruelest part. He changed the cloth on my head, wiped sweat from my collarbone with a hand that shook, fed me water when my throat stopped working. I don't remember most of it, but once I woke to find my hand clutched to his chest, his eyes red from no sleep, and still no words, just this quiet, determined presence, like he'd been waiting for something to break, either the fever or me. I think I broke first. On the 5th night, I came to in the thick of a sweat-soaked haze. I heard myself say, "Why do you care?" His eyes lifted to mine. He didn't flinch, didn't smile. But in that silence, I heard the answer. Because someone had to. The next morning, the fever broke. I woke to the sound of wind through the open window, and the sight of him asleep in the chair, one hand still holding mine, his head tilted awkwardly to the side. He looked tired and young. I should have felt fear. I felt something else, something soft, terrifying in its tenderness. He left before I rose, but the tray was there, with honey and a violet, pressed flat between 2 napkins. I put the flower in Mara's book, between the pages where she wrote of his eyes. Then I folded the ribbon I had found and tied it around the journal's spine. This house was full of ghosts, but for the first time, I didn't feel like one of them. That evening, I found him outside in the old orchard, splitting firewood with one arm. His shirt was off, back slick with sweat. I saw the scars, long, deep, some old, some newer. I stepped into the clearing, boots crunching over dead leaves. He turned. Didn't hide the scars. Didn't cover himself. He just looked at me, breathing heavy. And I looked back, not away. I said the first thing that came to mind. "You should let the orchard live again." He blinked once, then nodded. That night, I slept without Mara's journal beside me, because for the first time, I didn't feel alone.
I lost her once. I won't lose you. The snow came early that year. Hard, bitter flakes like white ash. A kind that doesn't melt, it buries. We were in the barn mending saddle straps. I'd started working alongside Silas every day now. There were no words, just rhythms, leather creaking, tools passing between our hands, silence turning to something warm. I liked the way he listened, even when I didn't speak. That morning we heard hooves, too many for a visit. Silas stiffened. He stood slowly, peeled his coat off the peg, and reached for the rifle over the door without looking back. By the time I stepped outside, they were already dismounting. 6 men, dust-worn, grinning like dogs around a fresh kill. At the center, Cole Danton. I hadn't seen him since I was 17, but I knew the shape of his shadow, knew the way his lips curled when they thought they'd won. "Thought I'd find you dressed finer, but I'll take you anyhow," he said, stepping toward me. Silas stepped between us. Didn't speak, didn't need to. Cole laughed. "Can't talk, huh? Just like old times."
He looked past him, at me. "You were promised, Ellie. You think being passed off to a mute man with a big house breaks that?" My stomach turned. I remembered the way he'd cornered me once behind the livery, what he said, what he tried, what Hoyt let happen. Cole hadn't come for justice. He came to own me. Silas didn't flinch, just lifted the rifle to his shoulder. "Go home," he said. One word, his voice like gravel and fire. I'd never heard it before. The sound stopped everything, even Cole blinked. But then he smiled and drew his gun. The first shot missed, the second didn't. Silas dropped to one knee, shoulder pouring red. The barn door exploded open behind me, the steward, shotgun in hand, roaring something I couldn't hear over the blood in my ears. I scrambled toward Silas, dragging him backward as the air filled with smoke and thunder. Cole charged, and that's when Silas stood, bleeding, hurt, but unbent. He shoved me behind him and took another round in the thigh, but he didn't fall. "I lost her once. I won't lose you," he said, voice rough as iron, eyes burning holes through Cole's face. He fired. Cole dropped like a felled tree, mouth open in shock that never got to turn to pain. The others scattered. It was over in 10 seconds, but it rang in my bones like church bells. I pressed a cloth to Silas's wounds. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. "You need a doctor," I whispered. He shook his head, looked at me. Then, soft, so soft I barely caught it, "Stay." I should have said no. Should have told him I had every right to leave now, that the debt was paid, the fear behind us. Instead, I reached for his face, wiped blood from his cheek with my thumb, and said, "I'm not going anywhere." That night I sat by his bed like he had for me. He didn't speak, but his hand found mine and held tight.
I was given away, but now I choose to stay. They came 3 days later. Townsfolk, half a cinderbrush it seemed, riding under the banner of righteousness they'd never bothered to hoist before. Sheriff Wills at the lead, jaw kite, hat low. Behind him, Mrs. Hobb, the preacher, and even that drunken weather-vane Hoyt had the gall to show up for a taste of spectacle. They didn't come to rescue me. They came to feel better about not stopping it in the first place. I saw them from the second-story window. Silas was still healing, shoulder bound, leg stiff, but he stood beside me like the stone of his manor's name, gritted, quiet, and carved from resolute. We didn't talk strategy. There was no time. I went to the closet, took out a dress the color of coal, pinned Mara's ribbon to my collar, and walked out the front door. The wind bit sharp. Snow clung to the porch railings like frostbitten fingers. The crowd looked confused at first. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shackled. I didn't look like someone needing saving. Sheriff Wills cleared his throat. "Miss Wade, we come on account of rumors." "Rumors," I said flat. "That you were sold, taken against your will, held here by," his eyes flicked to Silas, who'd stepped just behind me, "a man with a reputation. Funny, none of you stopped it when it happened." Nobody met my eye, except Hoyt.
He sneered like he expected thanks. That's when I stepped forward, pulled the ribbon from my collar, and held it up. "This belonged to Mara Vane," I said. "She died waiting for someone to choose her." I paused. "I'm not waiting anymore." The silence landed like thunder. "I was given away," I said louder now, voice shaken not from fear but the weight of truth. "But I choose to stay. Not because I was bought, not because I was broken, but because I am more than what any of you decided I could be." I turned to Silas. He never asked for anything, not a word, not a touch. He gave me space, bread, a name that wasn't his to steal. He gave me quiet, and I filled it with myself. Mrs. Hobbs started to cry. Hoyt turned red as a poisoned apple. Sheriff Wills cleared his throat again, but this time it didn't come with words. The crowd shifted, and then, slowly, one by one, they began to ride away. Hoyt stayed the longest. "You're just a whore in finer fabric," he muttered. Silas moved forward, but I raised a hand, looked my uncle dead in the eyes, and said, "Your debt's paid. Try collecting again, and I'll bury you with it." He spat, but he left. I stood on that porch until the horizon was empty. Then I turned and stepped back into the house that I now called mine. That night Silas lit the hearth. He said nothing, just handed me a journal, blank. "You want me to write?" I asked. He nodded. "I don't know what to say." He looked at me for a long time, then touched the cover, then my hand, and finally whispered, "Start with who you are."
Together, they planted carrots and forgiveness. Spring came like it had something to prove. The snow receded. Mud swallowed the edges of the path. Birds began singing again, low and cautious, like they were testing whether Blackridge would let them live. It did, because something had shifted. Not just the land, us. Silas healed slowly. His leg stiffened in the cold, his arm didn't lift as high. But he didn't hide the pain. He moved through it, showed me how to oil a plow harness, let me dig the trench rows when his shoulder refused. The orchard was still half dead, but we started small. Carrots, beets, things that grow down first before showing green. Felt appropriate. We built a greenhouse wall with salvaged glass, a row of trellises, repaired the old barn's east loft. The steward helped, smiling now slightly. I learned his name was Holt. Silas taught me to ride the same horse that once waited at the gate while I nearly ran. Her name was Ivy. She liked apples, and me. One day, I found Mara's journal on the kitchen table, open to a blank page, a note tucked inside in Silas's hand. "Write your own ending." That night, after supper, I asked the question I'd buried for months. "Why me?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at the fire. Finally, he said, "I looked like her at first." A long silence followed. "But then, you didn't." I waited. He said, "I remembered what I didn't do, what I let Mara endure. I thought maybe if I gave you a place to breathe," he trailed off, "maybe I'd save you both." "You didn't save me, Silas." His eyes flicked to mine, hurt, confused. I smiled. "I saved myself.
You just made it possible. We buried a time capsule in the garden, an old tin box filled with scraps, Mara's ribbon, a sprig of lavender, Holt's mother's sewing needle, and one of my blank journal pages folded in half. I said, "Someone will dig it up one day." Silas nodded. Let 'em see what lived. We didn't talk about marriage. Didn't need to. He held my hand every morning now, brushing dirt from my nails. I'd kiss the scar on his shoulder when he groaned in the cold. We were past ceremony. We were planted. One night, I woke to find him sitting at the edge of the bed, watching the stars. I said, "I never asked you something," rising on my elbows. He turned. I took his hand. "Do you want me?" He swallowed hard, then nodded once, so slow I thought it was grief instead of desire. I said, "But not because I was given, right?" His jaw clenched. He brought my hand to his lips and whispered, "Because you stayed." The next day, we planted wildflowers behind the stable. He let me choose the colors.
Once I was taken as debt. Now I awaken as someone chosen. Summer came with gold in its hands. The garden bloomed in reckless color. Chickens clucked near the porch again. Ivy, now gray-muzzled, still whinnied whenever I brought her a slice of apple. And the manor, Black Ridge, finally breathed. It creaked and warmed like an old body learning to dance again. We opened the last locked door in July. It had remained untouched, sealed with a key neither Silas nor Holt had dared use since before me. Mara's room. Silas held the key in his palm a long time before handing it to me. He said, "It should be you." The door gave with a sigh. Inside, a flood of dust and light. The windows had never been shuttered. Sunlight poured across an old vanity, a woven rug, a stack of yellowed letters on a nightstand, and above the bed, framed in tarnished silver, a painting of her, Mara. I stared at her for a long time. She looked like me, but only from far away. We didn't speak that day, just cleaned, polished the mirror, folded the quilts, aired the room out like you would a wound before stitching. Then we left the door open, forever. A week later, we invited the townsfolk, not for a reckoning, for a remembrance. There was no announcement, no threats, no speeches, just word passed along the road that the manor was open, and Mara's name deserved breath. They came. Not all, but enough. Mrs. Hobb brought shortbread. The preacher brought his silence. Even Sheriff Wills showed up, hat in hand. I stood beside Mara's door and told them what I'd found in the walls, in the journal, in the silence. I didn't speak of what Hoyt did, or what Silas had failed to do. I spoke of what Mara had left behind, of what I had found within. Before they left, I read aloud from the last page of my journal, just 4 lines. Once, I was traded like bread and salt. Now I live in the house I choose, not because I was kept, because I stayed. After the last guest rode off, Silas and I mounted Ivy and rode up the ridge. We brought flowers, planted them beside Mara's stone, now polished and reset. Silas knelt beside it and touched the soil. He said, "I kept her waiting." I took his hand. I said, "She forgave you." We rode down into dusk. Below us, the manor glowed warm from within. That night, I placed the journal on the desk in the hall, Mara's ribbon around it, a violet dried inside. Then I left the door open, let the night breeze turn the first page.